Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about something that might sound a little controversial, but in practice it absolutely works, and it worked very, very well long before people really got into tracking macros and everything else. And honestly, it's probably the closest science-based mindset, even though it sounds very bro, and that is the idea: as long as you are eating large amounts of protein, eating whole foods, you probably only need to track calories. And I'm not saying there aren't advantages for water weight to keeping carbs lower at certain points. I'm not saying there aren't advantages to keeping up with the type of carbs and fat that you eat, because there absolutely are. That's not what I'm saying here. So I want that to be very, very clear. And I'm also not saying that tracking macros doesn't work. What I'm saying is that there may be no benefits to it. In other words, I've heard a really good coach who I know who works with high-level athletes in a number of sports, who is jacked and shredded and strong himself, who said, yeah, I don't even count protein anymore. I just eat 2 pounds of steak every day. All right? He's like, yeah, as long as I eat 2 pounds of steak every day, who cares how much protein I'm eating? He has a valid point, because he's protein overfeeding at that point. In other words, if you know that you're eating large amounts of protein, which is often the case for me, I've gotten to where I almost don't track anymore. It's like, I don't know, did I have 220 grams or 350 grams today? I don't know, but I never have less than 1 gram per pound of body weight, and that's without tracking. It's not necessary, because I personally do a lot of high protein foods, and it kind of falls in line with what he said. If I just eat 2 pounds of steak every day and keep a loose track of my calories, and that works great for him. And so that's kind of the point that I make, is that there's no point obsessing over your macros. And if anything, a lot of the flexible dieting, they promote eating too much, what they call just discretionary foods, or their 20%. And it's honestly not the healthiest thing in the world. And I'm not saying you can't do that when you go out to eat or a social setting. That's probably the best time to kind of have those free foods, as long as they fit your calories. But a lot of times these people are doing it every single day, and you have to look at that and go, if you just ate more fruits and vegetables and stuff inside of those same calories that you're talking about, your recovery would be better, your health would be better, you'd feel better, right? They would feel better. People kind of will put that little dopamine hit of eating that junk food every day. They will place that over feeling better physically and mentally 24 hours a day. And it's just a fascinating thing. And I think it highlights how, for us as a society, food is an addiction. And we do abuse food, okay? Because that's exactly what it is. That's why people say, oh, I really need this really delicious dessert and I've got to work it in. It's for a dopamine hit. Right? That's the same reason that people do cocaine. There's no difference. Now people say, what do you mean? There's a big difference. It won't kill you as fast. Yeah, but that's not the point. The point is the motivation and the psychology and the brain chemistry behind it is no different. I'm not equating, eating a cupcake with being as bad for you as cocaine, right? I'm not saying that. However, from an addiction perspective, that is the exact same reason they're doing it. And people are willing to trade feeling good, their energy, even their psychology and everything, they'll trade it for that dopamine hit. But that's besides the point. Let's come over and talk about the rest of this with macros. All right, we know, based upon most of the literature, that carbs versus fat doesn't really seem to matter for athletes. As long as you're getting enough fat to get your fat-soluble vitamins and your essential fatty acids, your fat intake probably isn't usually important for performance or muscle growth or fat loss, just like your carbs are not, as long as you're getting sufficient carbohydrates to fuel your training. Well, if most people here are not hybrid athletes, they're not using that much glycogen. People will say that all the time, well, I do this amount of squat volume. I'm like, well, first of all, your amount of squat volume is fucking moronic. Don't cry when you peak at a 400 squat. Number two, you're still not burning that many carbs. You know, people have, again, this strange idea. If I work out, I'm glycogen depleted. It's like you burn 10 grams of carbs in that hour-long workout. Okay? Maybe 15. That's less than 100 calories of carbohydrate. That's an apple. That's one slice of bread. Okay? That is what you burned in your grueling squat and deadlift session. Even if you did a bunch of really high volume work, you burned an apple's worth of carbohydrate. So this is, again, a very false idea. Now, when you make these sort of statements, you will have people who will say, well, that's not true, because what if I did this? But then you're tracking your macros. If someone says, if I drop my fat to just as low as absolutely possible and I don't supplement any fish oil or anything, are you still saying this is true? Well, no, because you're doing the exact opposite of what I said. You were intentionally back to tracking the macros instead of just eating whole foods and saying, hey, I should probably have, some healthy fats in my diet. Okay? And just eating a variety of foods. You're intentionally cutting the fat crazy low. You're tracking the macros. So no, it's not the same thing. You're not doing what we're talking about. Same thing if someone takes it to the other extreme with the carbohydrates. Well, what if I take my carbohydrates to pretty much zero? Well, so you're not eating any vegetables. All right, well, that's fucking moronic. You're basically an idiot at that point. Okay, let's just accept that. You are, admit it, come to terms with it. You're probably not functioning at a very high level cognitively if you think that's a good idea. Probably stupid. So back over to the other point there. If they're cutting their carbohydrates that low, you're still not doing what I said and focusing on whole foods, making sure there's just a lot of protein foods in your diet. Okay? And tracking your calories, because again, they're back to intentionally counting. And the point is that when you stop counting or trying to take them to the extremes, it just doesn't matter. You figure what you're going to burn 50 grams of carbs at the most from your training in a day, and that's if you're pretty really, really serious. I'm talking lifting and cardio. Okay? And if you don't eat that many carbs, you'll just burn fat for most of that. And that's what the research shows. Same thing, with the fat, right? You probably need to have enough to get your essential fatty acids. If you're throwing in some fish oil and eating some healthy fat sources every day of some type, you're probably in the clear. And I'm not saying we can't fine tune these things, but I'm saying for the majority of people out there who just want to be strong and fit and lean and athletic and healthy, it's actually not that important to track this stuff. As long as the calories are dialed in and you follow just those guidelines I gave, you're probably fine. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.